One of the best budget upgrades you can do in a Glock pistol is to install a Glock performance trigger. A lot of guys assume that these won't work in their Gen 3 Glock because the trigger only lists Gen 5 models on the packaging. But here's the thing, with a little Florida man engineering, we can get these to work in a Gen 3. Let's start with a stripped frame. I'm going to use a Grit Grips Gen 3 frame for this example. Now let's compare the old Gen 3 trigger with the Glock performance trigger. You'll notice that the only difference between the two fire control groups is the lengthened wings at the bottom of the Gen 5 Glock housing. So let's fix that. I use a Ryobi dremel. I like these because they're simple and battery operated. I'm going to use a coarse grit sanding wheel for this. We'll take a little bit of material off the wings of the bottom of the housing, then we'll fit the housing into the frame to test fitment. We'll do this over and over again. Remember to move slowly, as you can always take away more material, but you can't add more back. You're going to want to grind down just far enough so that the trigger housing sits in the Glock frame cleanly. You should also inspect the rear frame pin to make sure the hole is through and through. Once good to go, we'll put the pins back and reassemble. Test the trigger thoroughly to make sure of proper fitment. Slide the slide back on. I've heard feedback from multiple places online that people said that you must have a Gen 5 backplate with a Glock performance trigger. I'm running Gen 3 plates. I'm pretty sure I haven't had any issues on both my Glock 34 and this 19 build, so I'm not sure that's true, but your mileage may vary. So with everything tested, let's oil up the performance trigger. Glock recommends that you lube the trigger in 3 places: between the trigger bar and connector, between the trigger bar and frame, and finally on top of the sear holder. Adding some oil to these areas will ensure the performance trigger operates as smoothly as possible and consistently as possible. And let me tell you, it is really smooth. The pull weight on this trigger is only 4 pounds. The upgrade is affordable enough that I can drop it in any of my Glock builds. I still don't carry this in my EDC Gen 5 Glock 26, primarily because I think Gen 5 triggers really aren't that bad to begin with, and for my carry gun, I want to keep the pistol as simple and maintenance free as possible. However, if you have a Gen 3, I think this upgrade is definitely worthwhile. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. If it was, consider subscribing to the channel. Happy Glocktober, and we'll see you next week with another Glock video.